Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Michael Grahamslaw. This is the Daily Newcastle. And today we are diving into Newcastle United's victory over Burnley at St James's Park. A big game that saw Newcastle looking for momentum. Burnley fighting for points. And it had all the making of a proper Premier League scrap, with Scott Parker and Martin Dubravka returning to St James's Park, where obviously they were both players. We'll start off with the starting lineup as we saw a huge number of changes for Newcastle, 6 in total. Starting at the back, Lewis Hall missed out through an illness, so we saw Dan Burn return to left back and Fabian Schär coming in at centre back. In midfield, we saw a complete change. Bruno Guimaraes in for Sandro Tonali, Jacob Ramsey in for Joe Linton, and Joe Willock in for Lewis Miley. Massive changes and big chances for those centre midfielders. And then on the wings, we saw both Anthonys come in for Barnes and Murphy. But we kind of expected that and we predicted that in our prediction, which I will actually just add. Apologies for those that have expecting content from us for the few days before this. Cloudflare issues, which have been going on for weeks, recently have been impacting our recording platform. We've had two lined up and pressed out, but we could only get one of them out. We could have got both of them out at Saturday at 12 o'clock, but we thought what people would want to see would be the match preview. So we got it out in the end, but apologies for the delay. But back to the big part here. So the thing we really got excited about was seeing Yoane Wissa's name on the bench for the first time since joining Newcastle. Newcastle's £50 million striker back in action, and something for Newcastle fans to be very excited about. Although, when it came to the actual game, Burnley started the better of the two sides with a series of corners, one of which saw Burnley pick up a three-header about 6 yards out. Then Tino Livramento nearly scored an own goal, and Burnley had a counter which left them 3-on-3, but that was squandered, and that was all in the first 3 minutes. It was going to be a long day for Newcastle if they continued in that vein, but Burnley started with a lot of confidence, and it sort of felt like they were maybe a little insulted, or maybe buoyed by the changes that Newcastle made and thought they could capitalise on that. But it was Newcastle that did have the best chance. Livramento got in behind, like he did a few times in the first 10 minutes. He crossed the ball over. Gordon knocks it down instead of going for goal. And it unfortunately bounced off the thigh of Ramsey and straight into the grasp of Martin Dubravka. And it does have to be said, that was pretty much part and parcel of Jacob Ramsey's game today. Really not his best day at the office. It gets a whole lot worse at the end. If you haven't seen the game, we'll get to that. But the other central midfielder who came in who had something to prove, Joe Willock, thought he had a very good game. First time it really comes forward is from some brilliant pressing from Willock. It leads to Newcastle creating an early chance. He wins the ball back on the edge of the box, lays it off to Bruno, who puts it wide to Alanga. Alanga fires it across to Voltemata, but Voltemata's volley is straight at the Burnley defender, and this is in the first 15 minutes. And if you don't know, that was the only shot that Voltemata had in the entire game. And when Burnley play the entirety of the second half with 10 men, it's really not something you want to hear from a Newcastle perspective. But Burnley's corners were what were causing Newcastle United the biggest issue, let's say. Ramsdale punched one onto the bar. It was really poor goalkeeping, to be honest. And it was Bruno Guimaraes causing most of the danger for Newcastle United. Anthony Gordon hits the post, and what is probably our best shot comes from nothing really. One touch play on the edge of the box. Good little move, and Anthony Gordon just curls it against the far post from the left onto the right far post. But I mentioned Burnley's set pieces there, and they placed them directly on Ramsdale and identified that as a bit of a threat. However, anything that Burnley can do, Bruno Guimaraes decided that he could do it better. His corner from the left-hand side flew over the head of Martin Dubravka and flew right in the top right corner, and it does have to be said, Anthony Gordon was slightly nudging the former Newcastle goalkeeper. But it's really, really weak from Martin Dubravka and brilliant from Bruno. His 9th goal contribution for the entire campaign. And I believe that's called an Olympico, scoring straight from the corner. The first player in Newcastle United history to do just that, and the 20th to do it in the Premier League. Absolutely fantastic from Bruno Guimaraes. And if he got a bit of a drop, well, if he wasn't dropped, let's be honest, but after being rested in midweek, it's almost like he took it as an offence, because second half against Spurs and first half here today, Bruno Guimaraes, absolutely fantastic. Then it kind of became the VAR show. The first time VAR got involved, it probably didn't need to, just quickly checked, thankfully. But Kyle Walker, who usually struggles at St James's Park, picked up a yellow for hacking down Anthony Gordon. VAR looked at it for excessive force, but decided the yellow card was enough. But Burnley couldn't escape a red card in that first half. They were playing with passion, but they were a little bit sloppy. And it's a brilliant move from Newcastle United that opens them up. A brilliant running behind from Antonio Alanga. He was found by Anthony Gordon. Those two wingers do seem to work quite well together. The Swede went through on goal, and it's a clear red card. He's hacked down by Lucas Perez. The VAR checked it because they were thinking, the contact might not be as much as it needs to be a red card, but there was contact and it was a red. The question for me is, could Anthony Alanga have stayed on his feet, went around the goalkeeper and ended up scoring? It's probably harsh criticism of Alanga. After all, the red card, pretty much Newcastle 1-0 up. Burnley get a red card. It's one of those where the game pretty much falls into Newcastle's hands. Or so you would think. But from the resulting free kick, Fabian Schär forced Dubravka into a good save. We've seen plenty of them from Dubravka over the years. Wasn't really much of a shout, or a shock, should I say. But what probably the only thing I had to shout about towards the end of the first half, I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for the added time, and I'm thinking, you know what, we've still got 7 or 8 minutes here. Because we had 3 pretty, not big, but long VAR calls in the first half. A couple of Tino Livramento went down for an injury. Burnley's corners, they had 8. All of them took at least 30 seconds to be taken. And somehow we only had 5 minutes announced for added time. It was quite ridiculous, actually. I think we probably should have had 8, 9, maybe even 10. But it ended up being quite a bit longer in the end. Newcastle had a penalty decision go our way. It wasn't originally given through VAR. Ramsey did well to win the ball back in midfield. Newcastle built up their attack. It ends up with Gordon whipping a cross in, and Leslie Ugochukwu, say that when you've had a few pints, tries to push Nick Multivada away from the ball, and he's not even looking at the cross coming in. He puts his hands out. The ball hits him on the arm. He probably doesn't even know the ball was there. And yeah, he tries to stop Nick Multivada getting onto the ball. Instead, gives away a penalty. It hits his arm in one of the most unnatural positions you've ever seen. Anthony Gordon steps up, buries the penalty, and into the bottom right corner. And Newcastle took a 2-0 lead into the break, and the referee blew the whistle seconds later. But honestly, I'd be surprised if the ball was in play in that first half for more than 25 minutes. But it was a decent half from Newcastle. Created a few chances. You would have liked to have seen them score from open play. It ends 2-1, so you can tell we didn't score from open play in the second half as well. But yeah, it was one of those where the corner and the penalty, any other game, if you're looking at it just from the statistics, you're thinking, well, Newcastle couldn't have played that well. But in the first half, we were decent. Burnley started quite well. Newcastle grew into the game after the 15th, after 10 minutes, really. And looked like the only side that were going to win the game. We'll get into the second half in a moment, but first we're going to go to an advert from Bionic.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionic, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionic provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionic. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
In the second half, very, very little happened. And I've written down for the first 15 minutes, but realistically, it could have been it was the case, should I say, for almost the entire half. Newcastle's best chances started with a dangerous Alanga cross, headed clear before Voltemada could head home, falls to Bruno Guimaraes, who tries that signature Travella-style shot outside the foot, 25 yards, and it flies towards the top corner, but Dubravka tips it over. Brilliant save from the former Newcastle goalkeeper. Gordon tried his luck with a corner. We tried to score from a corner 3 or 4 times in the game, but you could really tell the game plan from Newcastle was get the ball on top of Martin Dubravka, because he does flap at the ball a little bit, and that's why Newcastle fans weren't concrete on him, let's say, over Nick Pope last season. But with the Gordon one in particular, it goes down at the near post, bounces just in front of the goalkeeper. Malik Chow nearly gets in there to get a shot away, and that would have sealed the game 3-0, done and dusted. But very little happened. Pretty much the thing to talk about was the substitutes. Lewis Hall, Lewis Miley came on for Joe Willock and Dan Burn, both of whom had a decent game. Joe Willock can look ahead probably to the Champions League, and he's got a good chance of getting some minutes. Dan Burn can go record his lines for being the Phoenix Theatre's genie in the Christmas pantomime. Yep, not joking with that. Canny thing to do after getting your freedom to the city. You cannot go anywhere in Blythe without seeing Dan Burn, let me tell you. But also a bit later in the game, Gordon and Voltemada came off for Joe Linton, and making his debut, Yohan Wissa. Now, Wissa didn't really have anything to do. He had a few decent touches, laying the ball off. Alanga came close from 25 yards, curling it, but realistically, it was a nothing half. It was one of those where Newcastle just kind of tried to preserve their energy. And probably, I'm not going to say they didn't take Burnley too seriously in the second half, but they knew that the game was won, and it almost cost them. Burnley, great chance from a corner in the second half. Joe Worrell's shot, it falls to him about, let's say, 8 yards out. He fires a shot towards goal. It is going pretty much straight. It's going centrally, let's say. It's not going straight at Ramsdale. Ramsdale has to dive. He's part of the way through diving at this point anyways. He should save it. However, Jacob Ramsey, in what is one of the most baffling pieces of defending I've seen in a long time, just raises his arm. I say more of his arm, his elbow, and just clears it. It's not going well. It's going on target. It's very likely going to be saved by Aaron Ramsdale, and then Zion Fleming scores from the spot for Burnley to give them a chance in the game. And to be fair, it was a good penalty. They didn't really deserve to be in the game, but they did cause us issues at the start, and it was Newcastle's fault for not putting the game to bed. But I do have to say, for me, that was enough to say that Jacob Ramsey is now behind Joe Willock in the pecking order for centre midfielders. The stupidity in that move is endless, and it's forgivable if it happens once, but it puts you to the back of the line, because if you lose your composure in a low-pressure situation in the 90th minute against 10-man Burnley, you cannot be trusted in high-pressure situations like the Champions League and the Derby this time next week. I was absolutely furious with him, to be honest. And if he just lets it go past him, it probably is saved. And we're probably not talking about it. We're sitting here going, you know what, he didn't have a very good game, but he's still got a chance of playing. And I generally think Eddie Howe will be absolutely furious with his centre midfielder, man, because it is just sort of really poor mentality. In those situations, you 2-0 up, you're in a great position. You should be able to keep your head. And Ramsey lost his there, unfortunately. There's nothing to say that he won't get the minutes to play himself back into contention, but it is mental how he has gone from when he signed, tackling and battling with Joe Linton for that third centre midfielder spot, to now falling behind Joe Willock by December. There's a lot for Jacob Ramsey to do. I really like him as a player, to be honest, or at least I really like the Aston Villa version that I saw. Maybe watching him day in, day out more often now. I'm changing my mind a little bit, but I still think he's got the potential to be a great player for Newcastle. But certainly haven't seen that yet. And that really did take the edge off what was a comfortable game for Newcastle. We've come out of it looking very poor indeed. However, the second half was pretty much a training exercise. We made 6 changes and got 3 points. And at the end of the day, that is what matters. It's quite a tough watch, entertainment-wise. I can't imagine Eddie Howe was happy at the end of the game. But it was a much-needed, I don't want to say easy, second half for Newcastle, but a more relaxed second half ahead of what is going to be a pretty hectic week. Bruno Guimaraes carried Newcastle. There's no surprise that he's down as the man of the match for me. Joe Willock, 3 decent performances and 3 starts that I can remember. And to be honest, we're starting to see the Willock of old. So really, really poor timing for a bad performance from Ramsey. But as I say, he wasn't great before the idiotic handball. And Anthony Gordon, I do have to say as well, I criticised Gordon more than most. Maybe I should have criticised him more, considering there wasn't a Premier League goal contribution since January. But he looked very, very good today. Constantly got the better of Kyle Walker, and once again looked like the player we've kind of expected to see, and he took the penalty well as well. But what I will say, I've criticised some players there, and I've said some players played brilliantly. Well, about transfers, it's really, really easy to look at our signings and be hateful on Twitter, X, or whatever it is, on a podcast, talking to a camera, like I'm doing right now. But it is important to remember that some players simply need time to embed and get the best out of them. Remember Sandro Tonali's first few performances. He wasn't great at all, and you had half of the fan base already writing him off. And then you had some who just remembered that goal against Aston Villa and went, no, he's going to be brilliant. He's going to be brilliant. And now he's a revelation. He is one of the best in the league. And you can't say Ramsey is an awful footballer after watching 300 minutes of him across, 4 months now. You can't say Alanga is terrible after those 3 months. If they're still playing poorly after 12 months, then maybe you can say that. But this isn't enough time for me. We did start to see really good glimpses of Alanga today, getting past his man, whipping it in. And I'm very, very confident we'll see the best of Ramsey in the next 12 months as well. With Eddie Howe's style of play, we just need to embed players a little bit more. Some take a little bit longer than others. Hopefully it's not a Chris Wood situation. But I'm very, very confident that those two players will play themselves back into the starting lineup consistently. But if Ramsey can play the way he did today in his next game, he is playing himself out of the starting lineup, out of the squad, and out of any minutes. But there is a player in there. We saw that at Villa, and I'm confident we'll see it again for Newcastle. But before we end things on this match review, a couple of things I just wanted to go through before we finish. The first of which is I just wanted to let our listeners know Joanne's no longer working with the team. Don't worry, there's nothing scandalous there. None of that juicy gossip. Just one of those things where life changes. Sometimes hobbies need to be dropped. It happens. We would like to thank Jo for all of her hard work over the last 16 months. Been an absolute pleasure to work with. And if any of our listeners still wish to follow her, check out her food channels. There's some great proper Northeast Scran content on those. And we wish her all the best. What that does mean is that we're looking for a couple of people, actually. Maybe more than a couple, maybe a few. Notice I didn't say a definitive number there. But we're looking for a few people to join the Daily Newcastle podcast team. We're not just looking to replace, we want to expand even further. Naturally, it's unpaid at this point, as you can probably imagine. It's a pretty small operation. But as it stands, we're hoping to push things to the next level in 2026. So get in contact with us through the email in the description below if you are interested. And the second thing, this morning I had the pleasure of looking through our Spotify Wrapped for 2025. And I didn't know how many of you actually watched our content so frequently. To the extent, I got to the end and I was like, 200% improvement in listeners and stuff like that. I was like, it's nice. It's probably to be expected. We're a young show. We weren't even at the stage last year. We were just getting started pretty much. We did end up being one of Spotify's Rising Stars, marathon shows, and most talked about shows of 2025, which means we were effectively in the top 10% of shows for listeners, yearly growth, and most commented shows on Spotify. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart and from the rest of the team, I just wanted to give a massive thank you for your support in 2025. This is a big passion project for us all. Outside of our traditional 9-to-5s, we basically get home from work, then we'll work on this. And sometimes when I'm sat there at the office, this is what I'm thinking about. What can we do? How can I push content to the next level and stuff like that? And to know you, our audience, are enjoying content, what we're providing is all I need to fuel me for the next few years. Apologies for the long outro. But I just wanted to make sure you all knew what the support means to us. I've been Michael Grahamslaw. This has been the Daily Newcastle. Check us out wherever you find your podcasts, on our social media platforms at GSPN Newcastle, or even on the radio by checking out the NUFC Talk TV station, or TV radio station, should I say. But for now, take care.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.